Holodeck by August, object storage ideas, session on structured metadata. It's already a bit late, and I think this is going to be the last one for today. Yet, I don't say that I have a complete and final answer on this one, because for that we will have to build a prototype and see how it works. But what this is going to be about is the question. So we have metadata. I said let's have name value. Let's be able to keep all that. Isn't that going to be a mess? How do I find the metadata that I'm interested in? What if, like, this sounds like a huge mess. Like, just imagine a whole name value, name value, name value, name value, name value, name value. If you just think in full text search, yeah, so you can probably locate that information. So for search and retrieval it may be fine, but in order to work a bit better with that data, I would feel the necessity to like structure that metadata somehow. There's different suggestions or ideas so far that I came up with and I discussed with others. One that all of these things I still have. I say, please, if you see anything that I'm missing or that sounds impossible or wrong, please let me know. This is still an idea, still brainstorming. So, metadata, name value. What if we added, like, there's a schema definition for XML, but I think that XML will be over the top for this. And then others maybe say, like, well, then just use JSON, so you have hierarchies in there. So I'm like, yeah, that could go somewhere, but how do I find a certain tag? How do I, like, group things? Like, yeah, dude, JSON, you can have hierarchies and groupings. I was like, nah, I mean, well, maybe it does, but something in, like, maybe metadata pages. So different applications or different use cases could have different pages of metadata. So even if you have your crazy name value something that look like old INI files from 90s Windows world, you'd have them in pages. Could be good or not. Then there's something that came to me just yesterday, was like, what about simple network messaging protocol, SNMP? That's basically an old but still valid protocol for just exchanging name value tags in a clever way, and it's well charted territory. And they have their MIBs. Those are, well, I usually work with them like text files, and they have like a number, I will not explain MIBs here, look it up. But that's still kind of open question, like, how do we structure the metadata? How can we know that this title field would also be used as a title field if we describe it from EN 15907 ISO standard for cinematographic works cataloging idea? Like, what is the identifying title? You could just call that thing identifying title. And what if someone else also says it's an identifying title? So would it make sense to have like a metadata? So I can say, okay, the name of the name value pair is again more for us people than for, but you have like an identifier string as a name, then a human readable name, and then a value. Ooh, multi-language. I still have to write that down. What about multi-language? But so yeah, should our metadata have language tags? Probably yes, maybe not. But that's another question. So how can we structure the metadata? this is a very good question, and so far, even if we don't really structure it and just keep it as it is and have simple means of, like, even if you could just not only name value, but maybe even go as crazy as store a whole JSON or a whole XML in one metadata field. But I'd rather go for, if you really feel, you really have the case that you want to keep classically structured metadata like XML or CSV or like comma separated value JSON, then maybe it better be to branch off a new object and say, okay, that's the metadata I have, and relate it to that and parse it later and pull out whatever makes sense on the object level. So yeah, here it's getting a bit fuzzy, because I know from metadata wrangling that you'll see all kinds of things and trying to streamline it, trying to clean it up. Well, yeah, there's also like, what about controlled vocabulary and thesauri and stuff like that, vocabulary lists, but also in another session. So for a structured thing, something like schema definitions in the idea of JSON LD, SNMP, MIBs, look up these well-charted territories where we already deal with structured data, take their pros and cons, and see what actually would make sense to very generically put in the file system level, and also be ready to let go of a few things of finding the right metadata standard and structure that does it all. I'm not believing in this anymore. More, how can we keep and accumulate metadata in a way that we actually do have means of saying, show me this object through the lens of someone who just wants to arrange their musical collection or their private images, or a professional who wants to arrange images, or someone who works with images but from a scientific point of view in that field. Every one of these domains has their own ways of thinking and tagging, and I don't think it would make sense to try to make a one-size-fits-all. That's exactly which brought me to this idea, because this is what breaks all the time currently, like to squeeze one way of thinking into another one, and it's like, nah, what if we can keep both of these descriptions in their native form? And what if the systems evolve over time into, there is no XML, there's your structured metadata with the objects. So I would say at least hierarchies. So you have name value, and you have like nested name value. What if you want to refer to another metadata field? This is where the MIB SNMP thing would come in, because it has like a numeric hierarchy description with just numbers, where you can actually say, that's this name value field right there that I'm talking about. So in order to engage that question, I would suggest like refreshing our memories on SNMP, MIBs, XSDs, JSON LD, and maybe other stuff that I don't know yet. RDF and triples or tuples, another thing, because that's also very important, but the question is how this could be done in a way that fits this object file system benefit. But yeah, more on that. So the question how to structure the metadata, and if that's necessary, at least some means of paging, otherwise you'd go crazy. And hierarchy and paging, and maybe some sort of identifier for a name value pair, like an RDF registry thing, where you can say, I actually mean exactly this thing that I'm describing, and others mean the same. which brings me to double encoder and other things. So it's like that's where the rabbit hole goes further. Now we're beyond, you can tag stuff. You know, like, but what if you want to tag it professionally? But yeah, I still think it's worth it and doable.